But I think the thing to pull out of all these numbers here is that in that last month, we've seen that 70% increase in TVL just on the base chain. And so I feel like there's more and more of these curators that want to come into Morpho. They want to have all those guardrails built for themselves and just be able to pick the different options that they want for their vaults.
Welcome back to Wagmi TV, and welcome our DeFi enthusiasts specifically today. We are going to dive into the world of Morpho or Morpho Blue, an open platform that's shaking things up in the DeFi space. So Morpho allows users to not only earn yield and borrow assets, but also curate markets, build applications, and actively shape the future of DeFi. So stay tuned today as we explore the unique features of Morpho, discuss why it could be a game changer, and delve into the potential challenges that it might face. As always, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research. We're just a couple of guys on the internet that like to keep you up to date with some of the things that we're seeing in the space. So without further ado, I'll have Evan take it away.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I think just to get started, we want to dive into Morpho and really just give you guys an overview of the platform and really what you're able to do here. So here's the UI of Morpho. They kind of went through a recent rebrand, and you might have seen maybe in documentation or other articles that this was named Morpho Blue. They've switched that to Morpho. So yeah, just kind of stay up to date with the terminology. But essentially, what you're able to do here on the Morpho platform is do some borrow and lending, much like you would be able to with Aave. And so, yeah, it's a decentralized, over-collateralized lending and borrowing protocol. Allows users to borrow assets and provide more collateral. And they're really just on the Ethereum and base chains. And so I think at the moment they've got right around 1.4 billion in TVL if you were to look at DeFi Llama. But there's a lot of really intricate parts and a lot of reasons why it's actually very different than the mechanics that Aave has or Compound has. And so we want to dive into it. And so, yeah, to get started, let's talk about, what Morpho is and kind of what it has to offer. So when you think about Aave, Aave is a bank, essentially. They handle all the risk. It's not necessarily automated. It's off chain, and it's a protocol that gets managed by the team, right? And whether there's new code pushes or whatnot, it all gets voted on, and then there's a process to have those updates made. When you think about Morpho is an infrastructure for banks and a tool for lending and borrowing use cases. And so when you look at these different vaults here in this UI, you can essentially think of each of these as potentially their own Aave or their own Compound. And so it's more of a platform for lending and borrowing to happen on than really just a lending or borrowing service in itself. And so the first thing I want to talk about is really the big difference between vaults and between markets on Morpho. And so what we just clicked into right here, the Gauntlet EuroC core, this is a vault. And this vault, if you were to look at the curator right here, is curated by Gauntlet. So what does that mean? Well, that's essentially meaning that Gauntlet is the curator that is able to, set the bounds of the vault by enabling or disabling other markets within Morpho and modifying supply caps. So each vault has its own curator, and for this vault, it's Gauntlet that's curating. And so if we were able to if we scroll down here, you see you get the net APY of 16.61. And this is really going to be paid out mostly in the EuroC coin. There's, certain Morpho tokens that you're able to acquire, by lending and participating in this vault. But what I want to talk about here is essentially the vault allocation breakdown here. And this is where you see that difference between vaults and markets within Morpho. So with each of these line items essentially on this table here, it's its own market. So this is the CB ETH market. This is the wrapped ST ETH market. This is the wrapped ETH market. And when I'm saying this is the EuroC to CB ETH market, the EuroC to wrapped staked ETH market. And so as a vault, the way I like to think about this is it's essentially an ETF where these curators are able to expose your liquidity or whatever you've lent to these different lending markets like the Euro CBE market, and that's how you're able to gain yield. And so, with platforms like Aave or Compound, you really can be subject to exposure to any of the tokens, that are really within that centralized pool within Aave. Whereas here, the curator and even potentially yourself, you can go in here and invest in individual markets. You're able to determine the type of collateral that you're exposing the money that you're lending to. And so while that might be kind of in the weeds and a little bit technical on this stuff, really, the big overview here is that Morpho is a platform. Within Morpho, you have vaults that are curated by maybe DAOs, by other like fintech companies that want to come into crypto, by potentially just large, I guess, risk analysis firms, kind of like a Gauntlet, and they're able to curate certain markets for their vault. So you're able to have, very smart exposure to or decide on the very smart exposure you want to the assets that you lend. So it's a little bit different breakdown compared to, a Compound or an Aave. It's much more decentralized. It kind of upholds the standards of Ethereum more than you might see with Aave or Compound because it's permissionless. It's immutable. They're not changing the protocol here. So I think it's super exciting, and I feel like I've been ranting there, but Mata, you got any thoughts on kind of the stuff I just ran through there?
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool, and if there was one thing to pull away from that, I feel like it's just generally the flexibility with it, right? I think the flexibility could attract a lot of users that are seeking more control over some of the DeFi activities that they have, right? Just the pure ability to curate markets and vaults really allows those users that are going and diving into this to tailor that DeFi experience to their specific needs, to their specific risk tolerance, all of those things. So I think that's a really cool way to go about it, and different than anything that we've evaluated so far, whether that's, Curve, Compound, Aave, some of those other folks in the space. So that was a great overview.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, risk profile that people are willing to take on, essentially. Like you're really able to decide how your tokens are going to be lent and what they're going to be able to be lent for. And that's the difference here, is that it's almost more transparent with, what exposure your money that you've lended to Morpho is exposed to. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The one thing I wanted to dive into just really quick too is I wanted to talk about the growth that Morpho has seen on the base chain. And so when you look at Morpho, obviously we cover Aerodrome a ton on this channel. You see that as that number one protocol within base, and base is at what? Yeah, 2.4 billion these days and continues to climb. But you see Uniswap there is also a DEX, but Morpho is that third one. And this TVL, I'm not sure if it's, really correct. I feel like I've seen higher TVLs on the Morpho platform for the amount of money that's actually on base. But I think the thing to pull out of, all these numbers here is that in that last month, we've seen that 70% increase in TVL just on the base chain. And so I feel like there's more and more of these curators that want to come into Morpho. They want to have all those guardrails built for themselves and just be able to pick the different options that they want for their vaults. And I would, recommend anybody that's listening or interested in Morpho to dive into Morpho, go through the different base vaults and understand, the different collaterals that each vault has, potentially, the different settings that each one essentially has, and understand how they're different, how they might be similar, and really what your assets are exposed to. But I think that's a cool portion of Morpho, and I think that's why we're seeing such an increase in TVL in the last month.
Yeah, I love it. And I know there's a little confusion between Morpho and Morpho Blue. I was looking at there's two different DeFi llamas for it. So at some
Yeah.
point, I'm sure they'll fix those and we'll have a little bit better of an idea of how it's scaling and everything like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's fresh and new, right? So Morpho is really trying to offer a more efficient, a more flexible, a more user focused experience for both lenders and borrowers in the DeFi space. So I think it's important to note that, yeah, we have a lot of competitors in the DeFi landscape, but it's more important that it's just constantly evolving. Whether, Morpho ends up being the winner or some of these other folks end up being the winner, it's going to be a really awesome space for crypto moving forward. And, the competitive landscape will continue to change over time and continue to push folks to be better and better and, have these different focuses to eventually one of them is going to come out the winner. Right. So,
Yeah.
um, anything else that you wanted to add to that, Ev?
I can't remember the guy's title at Morpho, but I was listening to a very good interview with the Big Whale. It's another YouTube channel, and what this guy was talking about was essentially saying, this is the way that institutions want to come into crypto. They want to have those guardrails built out for them. They want to have it permissionless. They don't want to have to keep updating their code when Aave or Compound updates their protocol's code. And so I think that's kind of that exciting portion that I see as well, is that, this is really a nice place for institutions or fintech companies to get started because so much is built out for them. So I thought that was a really cool point that, I wanted to share as well.
I love it. Well, I think that's it for us today. If you enjoyed the episode on Morpho or want to hear more on Morpho, please like, comment, subscribe. We'll read through the comments, see if this is something that we should be reporting on more often. But as things come across in the DeFi space, we'll definitely plan to keep you all updated and hope everyone's having a great week. It's about to get pretty crazy here. So let's just see what happens within these markets and Wagmi.